Hello everyone, my name is Neuron and I'm back with another scientific theory. Man, I haven't said that in a while, have I? In fact, according to my analytics, almost 800 of you have yet to see me publish a video. Because, you know, when in the last video I said slow the videos down, I actually meant do absolutely bucking nothing for 6 months, then come back like nothing happened, even though I did try and talk with you guys in the comments, but anyways, let's get back on topic. For quite some time I was intrigued by the books of Equestria. They were all blank in cover and some of them have a symbol at best, and that seemed rather strange. Then there's the scenes where ponies write with their mouths, which is also pretty weird. Add that to the lack of written signs in Equestria, the weird writing we do get to see from time to time, and Spike's handwritten letters, and you can pretty much guess where I'm going for if it was not clear from the title of this video. Writing. Writing is very important in our world as it means the possibility of putting vocal communication into a solid form that can be preserved, shared and passed on. Even as I'm writing this very script, I am in fact communicating with my future self, the one in front of the microphone. Many people consider writing to be a milestone worth mentioning in the same breath as the fire and the wheel, but looking at Equestria, writing seems not only unimportant but nearly unexisting. So in this video, I will look at whatever instances of non-scribble writing we've seen in the show, explain the scribbles we saw as text, and try and explain how the pony world ended up with such a queer type of writing. Let's start from the very first time we saw writing in the show. In the very first episode, Twilight reads in the book about the Nightmare Moon prophecy, and we get to see the page where the prophecy was written on. To explain the first problem regarding this scene, why was that the only page in the book with writings on it, I can guess that the text we've seen in these 2 pages is unique as we almost never see it again. In other words, that text is a dead or complex dialect that isn't used anymore or was made with aesthetic intention, so it's worth of a picture in the book. You can take an example from olden text found in archaeology, like hieroglyphs and such, that can be translated into a book, but you'd most likely still have a picture of the original symbol text next to the translation. Now, the words Twilight read out were "The Mare in the Moon, myth from olden pony time. A powerful pony who wanted to rule Equestria, defeated by the elements of harmony and imprisoned in the moon. Legend has it that on the longest day of 1,000 years, the stars will aid in her escape and she will bring about nighttime eternal." If we assume that she was reading out the page, then these writings spell out this prophecy. Since there's an obvious difference between English and this writing, it's clear this language is not a code or based on any known language, because we only see 10 different letters. Not only that, this text has no clear spacing, and the ones that do arguably exist are only 6 in number. So, it is not based on English and I cannot translate it letter to letter, but we do get to know what the total meaning of the text is since Twilight read it out loud. If we compare the 3 paragraphs of symbol text to the lines we heard Twilight read, and we match the lines to the paragraphs based on length and chronological order, we can get a few answers. Because the last sentence of the prophecy is so long compared to the yellow paragraph, it is unlikely that the text is organized in a normal English left-to-right manner. Since we've agreed that this language is not English-based, right to left is also a possibility. If this text is read from right to left, then the yellow paragraph says "The Mare in the Moon, myth from olden pony time." The pink paragraph spells "A powerful pony who wanted to rule Equestria, defeated by the elements of harmony and imprisoned in the moon," leaving the long line of "Legend has it that on the longest day yada yada yada" being the blue paragraph. However, because the yellow paragraph is under the picture of Nightmare Moon, we can say it's a picture description, and therefore left to right still works with the same results as right to left. So, the yellow text spells out these lines, the pink these lines, and the blue these lines. The next text is in an episode that I will remember for the last of my days for obvious reasons, Swarm of the Century, with the welcoming banner of Princess Celestia, which spells out "Welcome Princess Celeste." This is obviously English, so no need to expand on this so far. The next text we see is in Showstoppers, where we see a poster for the Ponyville School Talent Show, and on that poster we see another paragraph written in the same symbol language as before. Interestingly enough, while looking at pictures for this video, I found an attempt to translate this text into the Crusaders' spoken lines, "Showcase your talents for all to see, perform at the Ponyville School Talent Show." It was actually pretty interesting, and it explained how you could theoretically write in only 10 letters. But, as interesting as that attempt was, it was under the assumption that these symbols are a code for English, an assumption that I disagree with, and it also missed a pretty important clue. If you compare this text to the first text, you can easily see that the poster text is identical to the second half of the blue paragraph. This is a big problem, since Twilight read the text as "she will bring about nighttime eternal," and the Crusaders read the same text as something completely different. Since the only difference between the texts are color and background, and it's unlikely they affected the meaning of the text, I can only assume one of these readings were inaccurate, at least from our perspective. So which is more logical? A printed book about an ancient myth having a text about the Ponyville school play, while Twilight recites the prophecy purely from her memory, despite previously stating she does not know who the Mare in the Moon is, or a poster of the Ponyville school play having an ancient text on it and the words the CMC read out were somewhere we couldn't see. Honestly, both are very unlikely, but among these two only options, I tend to go with the second, as for the first one to work, the book has to be relatively new, which isn't likely, the play should have been planned for a really long time, which is also unlikely, and the author needed to have a connection to the play. That, or a time-traveling author. So, I can safely assume that the blue symbol text on the poster has nothing to do with the talent show and actually reads out the last lines from the Nightmare Moon prophecy. Now we need to find out why. Why would a school talent show advertisement have something like "she will bring about nighttime eternal" written on it? The answer comes towards the end of the episode, where we see another poster without the text on the school grounds. That proves that the text on the poster Cheerilee carried was not meant to be there. It could be a printing error, but I think it's more likely some sort of graffiti. That might also explain why Cheerilee just happened to have that poster with her on her way to the library. She saw someone draw on it and took it off, possibly to replace it. But why would someone draw that? Think about it, who'd walk around the street, find a random school poster and spray paint the lines "she will bring about nighttime eternal" on it? I can think of 4 ponies who are likely to do that. An artist heavily inspired by the Princess of the Night, a little kid trying to be the cool guy, a random Luna fan, or an underground warrior trying to overthrow Celestia in the name of the New Lunar Republic. Okay, I may have exaggerated a bit with the last one, but this supposed graffiti work at least shows that the idea of supporting Luna instead of Celestia exists in the show's world. So, if you want, go ahead and declare the New Lunar Republic canon. You guys would probably do that anyway, so at least have a small proof to back you up. Okay, that does it for this symbol text, for we never see it again. Next, in Party of One, we see this cake which supposedly has the words "Happy Birthday Pinkie Pie" written on it, but the handwriting is so bad I can barely make out the H, which is so unclear I don't want to rely on it, but nevertheless I think we can agree this is English. However, since it's so unclear, I also think we should ignore it for now. Next season, we see some text in the form of the book titles in the Daring Do series. We can see clearly 2 different books, one in Read It and Weep and another in A Friend Indeed, both read by Rainbow Dash. If we look carefully, we can see that both books are called Daring Do and the Quest for the Sapphire Stone, even though the book from A Friend Indeed looks like it should have been called Daring Do and the Griffin's Goblet. Also, though the book is indeed called The Quest for the Sapphire Stone, the cursive writing is barely readable, as expected from a species with no thumbs. Other than that, these book covers are undoubtedly English. In the same season, we also see a Sisterhood social poster in the episode with the same name. That poster's language is very strange. It's definitely not a language I can recognize, but it seemed to have some English characters in a really weird shape. Attempting to read it in English will result in something like Shihuvi Ivkivk. So, unless this is recognizable to any of you viewers, I cannot translate it to any human tongue. But what if it's a pony language? Well, it could be, but since it's on a poster, meaning this language should be read by everyone, plus the fact that we never actually see this language again, lead me to believe that this text-looking thing is in fact a purely decorative addition to the poster, and the main thing in the poster is the Sisterhood social logo. I'll expand on this in a bit, so try and keep it in mind. In episode 23, Ponyville Confidentials, we get to see some more scribbles and writing since the entire episode is focused around a school newspaper. We can see that in that newspaper the titles are written in a weird form of English where some of the letters are flipped or upside down. If we would have seen this sort of English again, I would have considered the possibility that this is another English dialect. However, because we only see this text once, and since we only see it in the titles of the school newspaper, we can safely assume that it's just a terrible choice of font attempting to make the paper's headlines more interesting. I know that sounds dumb, and this English mess-up is really annoying to read, but let's not forget that we're talking about a school paper run by kids who have no experience in designing. In short, someone at the Fall Free Press sucks at designing fonts, but this is English. In Season 3, apart from Scribbles, Empty Books, and another Daring Do in the Sapphire Stone book, we get to see Spike's cooking book in the episode Just for Sidekicks. Say what you want about this episode, but at least it gives us the best example of background text in the entire show. After analyzing it a bit, I noticed that the letters on the top only appear on the top and have no letters from the bottom, so I assume these are capital letters in the title of the page. That title is made with 2 words, so logic applies that one word means jewel and the other means cake. Since these are capital letters, we don't know if these words appear again in the body of the text, even though it's quite likely that they do. A quick counting of the letters shows that apart from a couple differences that are most likely just handwritings, we have 15 different letters. Most of them appear 6 or 7 times, with 3 exceptionally rare letters and 2 exceptionally common ones. The spacing between the words here is way better than earlier, and as you can see, apart from the parts covered by Spike, the 2 pages are identical. Looking at the 2 halves of the page reveals that they're very similar, so I can assume these are 2 different variations of the same cake recipe with slight different instructions or ingredients. With that in mind, we can now explain why the second page resembles the first one so much. If the base of this recipe are the jewels themselves, then these 4 similar paragraphs can represent 4 cake recipes that would fit well with the jewels. For example, this paragraph is a simple white cake recipe. This one's a basic orange cake, this one's a carrot cake, and this one, let's say, chocolate chip cake. All of these are pretty basic cakes, so their recipe would be short and they'd all be tasty when combined with jewels. This assumption is also supported by the previous page of the book, which has a cake picture and another version of this text. Since there's no way 6 following paragraphs in a book will look almost identical, our explanation is quite likely. Another option is that all 6 paragraphs are redirecting the reader to a different page. For example, each paragraph can say, use the recipe in page blank to create a blank jewel cake. Looking at this text even deeper, we can see that the same words repeat themselves in each page, with these 3 being the same as these 3 apart from their rare letter. Most commonly, we can notice this combination of scribbles repeating 4 times a page, so it's most likely a word would be commonly used in this recipe, like mix, add, bowl, or ingredients. We can also see some 2-letter combinations who are commoner than others, like line, flat R2, and the 41 thing. From here, I could try and decipher this text, except it's not a code, it's another language, so analyzing it is as far as we can get. But I do have one last observation about the origin of this language. Because we never see this text again in the show, it is not a common pony language, but since Spike is the one reading it, we can assume it's some sort of dragon writing, which fits the cake recipe designed for dragons. If we consider that and the fact that in Dragon Quest we did saw he was quite curious about his origin race, it's not too far-fetched to assume that he learned to read Dragonish despite being grown among ponies. Now, we get to Season 4, where the intricate background and complex stories led to more scribbles than I could ever want, and a few more texts as well. First, we see another Daring Do book, this one titled Daring Do and the Ring of Destiny. Secondly, we see the Power Ponies comic with the intriguing title of I Power, which is a reasonable title, I guess. Thirdly, in Testing 1 to 3, we see this book in Twilight's library. Since the episode is about Rainbow learning the history of the Wonderbolts, and since Twilight referred to this book as the most complete book on the history of the Wonderbolts, and since there's a gigantic Wonderbolt symbol on the cover, I think we can conclude this book is called History of the Wonderbolts. No wait, there's only 2 words on the cover, so maybe Wonderbolt History works better. And finally, in Tradia, we see the first Daring Do book with the same cover and the same title as always. And that leaves us with the upcoming Season 5. We may get some more writing then, but who knows. Now, for the past 10 minutes I have repeatedly used the word English to describe some of the text we found, but I wanted to see just how many letters in the English language were actually canonized to see if ponies know they're speaking English. For all we know, Equestria might speak in an entirely different language, and what we get to see is a translation, so I looked throughout the show and I was very surprised by my findings.
Elements, E. It was under E!
Twilight, he just wants to take your order.
AJ?
TLC is in tender loving care or totally lost cause.
How about a round of applause for the SNS Magic Act?
Plan B? So please, oh please, RSVP and come and be our guest. Time for Plan B.
Now get back to it, RD. P.S. Obviously, Spike did not have to learn a lesson.
Come on, princess. Time for Plan B. Is it an O? Apple Bloom has cutie pox. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Daring Do and the Quest for the Sapphire Stone. Property of CDD.
3 a.m.
Snips and snails and bubblegum veils. He's my BBBFF.
As one of your PFFs, A-. B+.
I'm thinking she can make us all matching t-shirts that say Team Pinky and...
Exhibit A.
A-K... yearling?
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh! I'm just getting to the really good part. The maniac is about to...
And to the A to the U try P. Give me a P for Ponyville! P for P is for perfect! P is for, pain? P is for proud!
P is for Rainbow Dash!
Rainbow Dash actually starts with an R. Earth Unicorn Pegasi, or EUP Guard.
Actually, English isn't the only language observed in the show. Chances are you noticed that some of the characters are speaking in accents, and some of them have even talked a bit in their native language. First was Photo Finish, with a heavy German accent and the occasional Wunderbar. Secondly, Rarity uses a couple of French words when talking about fashion, and we also have Mr. Frenchy Griffin von What's His Name from the Mystery on the Friendship Express episode. Gustav, right, that's his name. Apart from his name in the Eclairs, which obviously originated in France, he uses the words Madame and Très Magnifique. Another French instance is Apple Bloom's fancy talk in Cutie Pox, where she starts speaking French and says, "Oh no, darn it, more cutie marks, what's this, I speak French," and there was actually a fourth French appearance, though not as plain as the previous three. In the episodes Party of One and Apple Family Reunion, Pinkie Pie and Granny Smith use the phrase RSVP, and even though it uses English letters, these two originated from this French saying that I have no idea how to pronounce. Also, forget about these guys, even if their accents sound Swedish, they're talking gibberish, so this is not a proof of the Swedish language. So, English is English, possibly French and German, and that leaves us with the weird scribble writings. Honestly, I cannot think of a groundbreaking solution to explain how this writing works, but I do have some explanations. If the only differences inside the scribbled word are up and down bumps and their height, straight lines and rare loops, we can easily have, let's say, 20 letters? 10 more if you really try. That's more than enough for a language. Let's try that. Let's say this shape is A, this shape is B, and so on. If we use this code, we can write in scribbles with actual meaning. Of course, this doesn't fix the problem of the high probability of misreading the similar scribbles, since the pony's handwritings must be even worse than mine, and also we don't see 26 different scribbles, barely 8 if we're picky, so this explanation is far from satisfying. The second explanation is that using combinations of up bumps, down bumps, and straight lines, you can create letters similarly to Morse code, thus enabling different letters to be made from similar base units. We can say that all the letters have the same bumps number, for instance 3, and so the spacing is still between the words and not between the letters. Let's try and make a code like that. Since the up bumps are way more common than down bumps, let's make the commoner letters have more up bumps. For example, the letter E, the most frequent letter of the alphabet, will be represented as 3 up bumps. The letter Z on the other hoof would be made from 3 down bumps, as it is one of the rarest letters in the English language. Using this code, I can write stuff in seemingly repeating meaningless scribbles. The only problem is that this language makes every letter a bit long, so it's not very efficient space-wise. This type of text is also supported by the typewriters we've seen in Daring Don't and Ponyville Confidentials, having 2 round buttons and 1 flat space-looking button. Those typewriters are perfect for writing in scribbles. 1 round button is up bump, the second is down bump, pressing both is a straight line, and the spacebar is to create the spaces between the words. If you're still unhappy with this text resemblance to the one in the show, you can make each letter consist out of 4 units, making up bumps way more common and the text more random looking. By explaining scribbles, we also solve the small inconsistency of the reading and writing directions. We saw ponies reading and writing both from left to right and from right to left, and that isn't very logical if they only have 1 written language. However, since English is read from left to right, we can say that scribbles are read from right to left, fixing 90% of the reading directions errors. But why would ponies create a language as strange and uncomfortable as this? Well, they don't have a choice, really. Since they don't have fingers, which are essential to create intricate detail, they're not delicate enough to make a different symbol for each vocal sound. With this answer, we find 2 problems who nicely enough cancel each other out. We saw English, which is made from pretty complex letters, and unicorns who are able to use their magic to perform delicate tasks. Therefore, English is most likely a unicorn language that cannot be written as well by non-unicorns. This means either unicorns invented text before Pegasi and Earth ponies, or they created a special language only they can write, both of which are likely judging by the high-cultured proud unicorns we saw in Heartwarming Eve. So, all of this proves that scribble language, though not very comfortable, is at least possible and would apply nicely to Equestria. Now, even if a species managed to evolve with such an uncomfortable language as their main language, why would their world have so little text? I mean, I know I've shown a lot of text in this video, but they were scattered throughout 4 seasons, making them very rare compared to our world. The answer comes from another subject that could be an interesting video: cutie marks. In Equestria, each pony finds his or her cutie mark at a young age, and from that day, that symbol on his flank is forever bound with his image. Names have less of an importance to ponies because they each have a personal symbol that singles them out, so though names are an auditory trademark, they do not need to base their physical autographs on letters, but can instead base it on their cutie marks. For example, if you wanted to refer to me out loud, you would call out Neuron, but if you were to refer to me in text, you could use my cutie mark as a replacement for a name made out of letters. In a world like that, ponies may have found this cutie mark solution fitting for places and objects as well. Note that though titles are lacking in various places, almost always a symbol will take their place. Take the Sisterhoof Social for example. This is a repeating event since Applebloom said she and AJ do it every year. Therefore, ponies already know what it is since ponies are very closely bound with each other. By hanging out the flyers with the unique Sisterhoof Social logo, Applebloom reminds everyone that it's time for another event. For example, let's say you are walking around and you suddenly started seeing tons of red posters with candy canes and snowy pine trees. What would you make of that? Obviously, you'd realize that the posters are about Christmas, and since Christmas occurs in the same date every year, you would know if it was celebrated soon. The same goes with shops and train stations and such. Instead of having a written name for a shop or a station, each has its own special logo like a cutie mark for cooperations, and that is what singles out every shop and every train station. Other symbols can be directly linked to certain subjects without a personal origin. For example, the symbol on the book Supernaturals might, and most likely does, mean supernaturals in all of Equestria. Someone in the past started giving cutie marks for basic nouns and subjects, and that turned into a universal form of writing. Now, let's do a little experiment. What's this? I'm willing to bet all of you thought a heart, and you'd all be correct, but how did you know that? This symbol looks very little like the actual organ, so how can you tell it is a heart? Because it is ingrained into the human culture and everyone learns it. Let's take this a step further. What does this mean? All of you know this means I love you. Why? Even if you do know this symbol represents a heart, the organ inside our bodies has very little to do with love. Again, it is ingrained in our culture that the symbol heart is directly linked to love and affection. Ponies most likely have national symbols for most basic subjects, and by marking objects using these symbols you explain that whatever is marked is tied with that specific subject. This Cutie mark writing theory is not an explanation that will solve a complete lack of text, but since we've agreed that scribbles can be a form of writing, this theory can solve the small amounts we see in the textless signs. So, I talked about the various symbol texts we've seen in the show, as well as overanalyzing each of them, thus uncovering the New Lunar Republic. I have explained scribble text and explained the shortage of text in Equestria by drawing connections to butt pictures. Yeah, I think those problems covered the majority of our subject, putting an end to everyone's burning curiosity and declaring text in Equestria sort of logical. The theory was based on a few assumptions, but we know how reading and writing works in our world and there's no reason it'll be different in Equestria, so I give this theory 3.5 on my Canon scale. However, there was one thing I couldn't explain. Where were the words the CMC read out when viewing the talent show poster? Saying they were in the background of the poster or outside the camera's view are both pretty bad answers, so since I cannot explain this, I reduced 2 points from the score, meaning a total of 5.5 on the Canon scale until this matter is resolved. If any of you have any solutions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. So, that about does it for this video. The English language definitely exists in Equestria, along with some ancient or rare symbol languages. The scribbles can make sense under certain conditions, and Cutie marks may have caused Equestria to base its noun system on visual clues. As always, if you find any mistakes or you want to add something to the theory, then you're more than welcome to post a comment. I can't wait to hear about all the texts I've missed who probably made this entire video utterly useless. If you have any suggestions on other topics you want me to research about, post that in the comments as well. I hope you've enjoyed my take on graphemics. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong, and until the next video, I'm Neuron, and goodbye everyone.